All right, guys, so I wanted to go over the backside of this page value notes, going over some information. Then we'll talk about shading these shapes, and then I'll give you a demonstration on it. So, for the most part, we're talking about shading with pencil. And I know I've said before, if you guys have ever seen like one of these, super large sketch pencil sets, they come with the scale and they have these numbers and these letters that go with them. So when you open them, they might look all the same, but they're actually all different depending on the hardness or softness of the lead. So, this is a set that I just opened. These all look the same, except you're looking at the number that's on the end of the pencil to differentiate it from the others. So let me show you just a little bit about that scale, and then we'll talk about the pencils themselves. So as far as a regular number 2 pencil, like this, probably one of my favorite pencils to draw, it's an HB number 2 pencil. So HB usually sits right in the middle of the scale, and then you'll have directions going to the left, going to the right, just like a number line. And to the left side, you're gonna have the H pencils, and they go like from 2H to 4H. And I'm just picking a couple here, 6H, 8H. And the H stands for how hard the lead is. And then once you go to HB, like I said, that's straight in the middle. Then once you go to the right of that, you're gonna get into the B's. So you could have like 2B, 4B, 6B, 8B. And those to the right, the B stands for how black a mark or how dark a mark that pencil will make. So these are softer and this is a harder lead. So it starts with hard lead over here, and as it moves this way, the lead gets softer. So that's how, from there to there, harder to softer lead. So what I've said is, ever since I started teaching Art 1, whenever I do pencil drawings, I try to use the same things you guys have access to. So like I could, get one of these big old fancy pencil sets, but for the most part, I'm using a regular number 2 HB pencil. I'm using a shading pencil, and the shading pencils that we have available, there's 2 of them. It's either a 4B or a 6B. So I usually get the softer leads because those make some nice dark marks. And then I use a shading pencil. And the reason I don't get any of these harder marks is because for the most part, when you're talking about shading, you're trying to get nice dark areas. And if you do need these soft grays, like the light grays, if you learn how to hold the pencil correctly and how to use it, you can make those light grays even with these soft leaded pencils. So now we're talking about looking at these shapes and how you're supposed to shade them in. So when we're shading with pencil, we're usually talking about LMDs. LMD, light, medium, and dark. For example, if I'm looking, and I'm gonna go ahead and label this with the marker, that way you can see. Light source, this one is the easiest one to do. There's 3 faces, so one is gonna be light, one's gonna be medium, one's gonna be dark. So the one that gets the most light is gonna be your light. The one that gets the least light is gonna be your dark. And then the one in between will be your medium. So that's kind of how it works. Circle, same thing, light source is coming from here. So I'm kind of gonna draw these circles. That would be your light. Furthest away is gonna be your dark. And in between is gonna be your medium. And with these, you kind of wanna keep the shape of the sphere or the circle, and that's how you would break it up. Now, if I was to go down to the cone and the cylinder, light source coming from here, this is gonna be your lightest, the darkest is gonna be away, and your medium in between. And pretty much how this is gonna go, it's gonna go something like that. Cylinder has a face on top, which is receiving the most light out of all of them. It's gonna be your light. The furthest away is gonna be on this side, and it's going to gradually show this with the fade from dark to medium there. And that's kind of how you would shade those. All right, let me get a new page. Now you kind of see, you know, how I'm breaking these up and how it works. Oh, the last thing, I'll go ahead and draw that on here. Remember, when you have a light source and you have a form or an object, it is going to cast a shadow. So you can kind of see that from all these corners, you're going to have a cast shadow, and it's going to kind of mimic the original form. Light's coming from this way, so it's going to throw a cast shadow there. On the sphere, coming from this way, so it'll actually throw a cast shadow that looks something like that. And on the cylinder, coming this way, I'm gonna throw a cast shadow that looks something like that. So you wanna be able to show those also, okay? Now, I did that in marker because on the camera, it's kind of hard to see sometimes. So I'm gonna go ahead and switch over to pencil, and hopefully you'll be able to see these. All right, so I'm gonna use for the first one, just a regular old HB Ticonderoga pencil. Like I said, whenever I wanna shade light, I don't hold my pencil like I normally would, using the point. What I'm doing is I'm trying to hold it so that I'm using the side of the lead. And for the most part, I'm either holding it with like the pencil like this, or I'm holding it in my palm, using it this way. You know, and it just depends. The thing is, you want to hold it towards the end because you put less pressure on the lead, and that'll give you a lighter tone. So we said the top, light. This side medium, and this other side dark. So what I'm gonna do is using the side, or trying to use a side lead, I'm going to add a medium tone to this. I'm trying to stay in the lines, but if you go a little bit past the lines, it's okay, because you can always erase, take your eraser and erase them out. Okay. So I went ahead and added that medium tone to the medium and to the dark section, right? Erase a little bit there where I went out. All right, next thing, now I have my medium tone there. Now this one has to be a little bit darker. So I'm actually gonna come in and add a second layer. It's kind of like when you're using the color pencil. You know, I'm gonna make this a little bit darker, so I'm gonna add this second layer. And I'm gonna try to stay inside the line, especially this line. Once I go past this way, if I go out a little bit, it's okay, because I can easily erase that with my eraser. So, boom. And that would be my dark area. Now, the last thing I'm gonna put in is my cast shadow. Like I said, it'll kind of look something like, I'm not gonna make it too big. Something like that. And what I'm gonna do, I'm trying to get a value that's in between those two. So a little bit darker than the medium, a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter than the dark area. Now, once I have that cast shadow, if I see that it's too close to those, oh man, it kind of looks like those, then I can either, you know, make them darker, do my adjustment. So for me, I think I'm actually gonna make the dark face a little bit darker. And for this one, I am using more of the point, because if you use the point of your pencil, it is gonna give you a darker mark. And it also plays a lot how much pressure you put on the pencil. So right here, I'm not putting too much pressure, but I am using the point, which is gonna give me a darker mark. And believe it or not, you know, just with this little shape, I mean, I could probably spend another 5 minutes just, you know, going over each layer, making adjustments, making areas darker, making areas lighter, and making it look how I want. So now I think make this one just a tad darker. And I think it looks kind of funny with that area on top just like straight up white. So I'm gonna go like with the side of my pencil, holding it at the very end, and just very carefully, lightly, like minimal amounts of pressure, adding a little bit of value on top. And I think that's how I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna go ahead and clean this up. Clean up all the edges and call it done. All right, for the sphere, I'm gonna go ahead and use one of the shading pencils. I'm gonna grab this one. It's a 6B pencil, 6B. Like I said, for this one, that's gonna be the light. So using the side of the lead, I'm gonna kind of like draw these circles all the way around. And as I go out, I'm gonna use more pressure, more pressure, more pressure, more pressure, and kind of do a little fade like that. Okay, now I'm gonna keep going and refine this a little at a time. So using more of the point, I'm going to make this band that's a little darker, you know, kind of going down here, and, you know, trying to keep that shape, that circular shape. And then I'm gonna go with the next band that's a little bit lighter. And all this is practicing how to use the pressure and learning how to, you know, ease up on the pressure a little bit at a time. And I'm going here a little bit lighter. And you can kind of see that what I'm doing, I'm kind of using this circular motion, and just going around and around and around until I get right there to the middle, where I'm trying to put minimal pressure on it, right? You know, I'm gonna try to make this a little bit more textured. So I'm actually gonna come in with these lines. Now instead of circle, I'm using more of a line. You know, the other day we talked about using hatching lines and different styles of line to shade. And that's what I'm doing now. I'm using more of a hatching line to create more of a texture, so it looks a little bit more interesting. All right, what I'm gonna do now is I'm actually gonna take my eraser and lightly do the white right there, right where the light would hit it on the highest point, and then little at a time just kind of fade out, fade out, fade out. Use a little bit of my finger to kind of smooth that out. And the last thing I'm gonna do for this one is I'm gonna add the cast shadow. So the cast shadow going a little bit under it. Looks something like that. And all you want is something that's a little bit lighter than the darkest area. Okay. So I'm trying to go through this fast. That way you guys can follow along and go through these, but I know it might take a little bit. All right, last thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna clean up this outside edge of the sphere. And that's that. All right, pyramid, light, medium, dark. So light there. And as I go this way, I'm actually gonna get darker and darker and darker and darker until I get super dark this way. I'll go ahead and try it the other way, starting dark. And as I move to the opposite side, getting lighter and lighter and lighter. And that's kind of how that would work, right? Clean it up. And as you could see, all that is the pressure that was put on the pencil. Not anything special, but I thought about, okay, a little bit at a time, I'm gonna ease up on the pressure. Last thing is gonna be the cast shadow. We want that is a little bit lighter than the darkest spot, just so we can differentiate between the two. And that'll be that one. All right, cylinder, same thing. This farthest away is gonna be dark. It's gonna have a gradual fade from dark to light. So I'm actually gonna start on the dark side. And a little bit at a time, I'm decreasing the pressure on the pencil. Boom, just a nice little fade. And that's all that one is. I'm gonna erase the top. Like I said, when you have these lines, you know, this one has like these bold lines that separate the planes. You know, it's easy because you can take your eraser and clean it up after you're done. You don't have to worry too much about staying in the lines. Now, other drawings, it is going to be a little bit more difficult because you're going to have to really think about staying inside the lines and not crossing those, because it might be difficult to erase those. Little cast shadow, make this one not too big. And that is my cast shadow. Okay. Last thing I want to go over. So there's two value scales. On one, I want you to practice using just regular blending technique. So that means one side is going to be the white of the paper. The opposite side is going to be as dark as you can get it. So right here, I'm using one of the 6B pencils. If you guys are using a regular HB pencil, just try to get it, you know, the darkest that you can. And then just like the video said the other day that we watched Mary Doodles, she was talking about once you have the light and the dark, all you want to do is have a gradual fade from white to this dark gray. So what they did is they did light on the remaining sections. Boom, right? I'll go ahead and clean this one up. And then next, they added second layer. Boom, that one's done. And that's how you're gonna go back and forth. White, light gray, medium, and then keep going. So I have these two squares left. So for the next one, I'm gonna go a little bit at an angle. So what you want to have is you want to be able to see the difference between each square. If two of them look too similar, then you need to make some adjustments and either make one lighter, make one darker, but you don't want any of these squares to look the same. You want them all to look different. And on this last one, I'm adding another layer in the opposite direction. And that would be one of my value scales. Okay. Next and last thing, last one here. So there's a couple things you can do. If you tried, especially for you guys that are in class, if you tried a 6B, you can try the other value scale with another type of pencil. If you only have one type of pencil for you guys at home, like an HB pencil, then maybe you can try one of the other techniques, like hatching. Right? A little bit at a time. You know, some of the things that we talk about hatching is making the lines darker, making them closer, just so that as you go from square to square, it looks like the value is getting darker. Like I said, there's a couple ways you can do that. Making the line darker or making it closer together. As you can see, I'm kind of going one at a time and just adding. So it'll go from white and a little bit at a time. It's getting darker with this hatching technique. So I'm down to my last two. I'm gonna go a little bit darker with my lines. And I know I'm kind of rushing through this. If I was like actually doing this correctly, I would be taking more time on this, because you can't rush this. But this is kind of a quick example of using hatching lines back and forth to create that value scale. So the only thing I don't want you to do, I don't want to do the exact same thing on both of them. So do one value scale one way, whether it's one pencil and then the second one, do either another shading method or with another type of pencil. So that, let me kind of show you zoomed out. It's kind of what it should look like, okay, once you get down the back. 4 shapes shaded in and 2 value scales. All right, that's kind of what I wanted to show you guys. And follow along. You can pause this and finish this backside up. For you guys that are at home, what you want to do is you want to draw each one of these shapes and then draw yourself 2 value bars, value scales. That way you can practice, and especially practice using those pencils. All right.